Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yes.
All right. Making sure we are doing this live and in person, but also on Zoom live, and it's being recorded. So no funny business out there. My name is Christine Rank Carter. I am the executive director for the Leepa-Rattner Museum of Art, and currently still the curator of the museum. And I will give you all a very warm welcome this evening as we celebrate Ed Hoffman, the architect of the Leepa-Rattner Museum of Art. Before we get started, I would like to also welcome our provost of the Tarpon Springs campus, Dr. Rod Davis, who will be saying a few words.
I'm glad that I'm standing tall. You guys see me okay? I really wanted to say welcome, but the biggest thing is LRMA, the LRMA Museum. This place is special. It's special to me, it's special to the community. And we are also welcoming a very special person in the community, Ed Hoffman, who, I can't say enough about him. I know that growing up, I've always wanted to be an architect because I think it's cool to be an architect. And anyone who's watched the show Seinfeld, I'm 100% George Costanza. That's me, to every degree. Anyhow, I don't want to take anything away from what we're going to put here for you tonight. I did miss the Friday. I'm still upset about that. But Ed is a special person. Ed is a special person to me. Ed is a special person to the community, and Ed is a very special person to this museum. We can say that he built the fabrics of the Leepa-Rattner Museum, and he did. So we are so fortunate to have someone like Ed with us, and we are super excited for tonight. And I don't know what else I could say except I'm glad to be your friend. And I'm sort of cheering on the sidelines like the George Costanza, who knows, famous architect. Anyhow, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. We appreciate your kind comments, and you were missed at our opening, so we're so happy to have you here today. I wanted to give you just a little brief overview of what we have going on this evening and what we have going on in the galleries. As you might already know, this is the Leepa-Rattner Museum of Art's 20th anniversary year. So that means we've been celebrating all year with a series of exhibitions that really has pulled out all the stops, from pulling out the masterworks, celebrating our Florida artists, which there are some in our audience this evening. And we, this fall, is the culmination of all of that by celebrating the career of our very own Edward C. Hoffman, architect, who is taking a picture right now. And with our serving as our inspiration, we've culled the collection to reflect Ed's love for our local history and for modernism through our major collections in the museum, from Florida artists to internationally known names. Also, since the museum is home to the original Abraham Rattner, Leepa and Esther Gentle collection, we have a special breakout gallery that celebrates that collection. And also here in the gallery that we're sitting in, the interactive gallery features structure of prints, the Dorothy Mitchell collection, featuring the wonderful collaboration between the Berghoff Cowan Editions and internationally known artists. And we actually would love to invite you to come back if you've enjoyed this program. November 10th, we will have SPC professor Linda Berghoff, who is with us this evening, to talk about this collection here. So this program is actually made possible by creative contractors who was very generous to sponsor this program and the exhibition. And Creative Contractors is actually a very special part of this journey since the very beginning, turning Ed's concepts into a soaring concrete structure with steel beams and beautiful galleries. The longtime partnership between Hoffman Architects and Creative Contractors is embedded throughout our community and will be experienced for generations to come, including the Leepa-Rattner Museum of Art. Just to keep you all in mind before I give you a little bit more information, that this program is being recorded. We will have this available on our YouTube channel. For those of you who are joining us on Zoom, we just ask that you keep your microphones on mute. We will have about a 40-minute program with Ed Hoffman and guest curator Lynn Whitelaw. And then we'll be opening it up for questions from the audience, and that includes those people in Zoom. You can submit questions through chat. So Visioning Structure is a 40-year retrospective of LRMA's award-winning architect, Edward C. Hoffman Jr. Recognized as a favorite son of Tarpon Springs, Edward Hoffman has left a mark on the built environment of this city since opening Hoffman Architects in 1981. Highlighting the major projects of Hoffman's career, Visioning Structure merges his passion for local history and modernism through architectural sketches, presentation boards, renderings, and models, and more. Hoffman's designs of the Leepa-Rattner Museum of Art received the H. Dean Rowe FAIA Award of Excellence in 2002, and he was recognized in Florida Architecture 100 Years, 100 Places in 2012. As an extension of Ed's exhibition, Building Legacies serves as the overarching theme that highlights the museum's major collections in 4 breakout galleries, including the architectural commissions of Abraham Ratner, maquettes of public art by Alan Leepa and Esther Gentle, and the contemporary works by local and nationally known artists. And later this month, we open Joseph Constantino's photographs. The guest curator for this special exhibition is Lynn Whitelaw, founding director and first curator of the Leepa-Rattner Museum of Art. I'll have Lynn introduce Ed in just a moment, but Lynn has committed a lifetime to elevating the arts and culture of our state. He is responsible for helping to lay this foundation of our cultural landscape. And we know it today, and his finger is on the pulse of arts and continues to be this heartfelt center of our community. So without further ado, I would say we're in pretty good company today. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest curator for Visioning Structure, Mr. Lynn Whitelaw.
I really want to thank the museum for affording me the opportunity to honor Ed Hoffman with the exhibition Visioning Structure as a tribute to Ed and his 40-year career. The show is a perfect complement, as Christina said, to our 20th anniversary of the museum and the programs and exhibitions that have been featured this year. When we opened the Leepa-Rattner Museum of Art in January of 2012, it was 4 months after 9/11. The museum, and in particular, the design of this modernist building, created a sense of pride, filled a cultural void in our community, and it served to bring people together and united in a celebration of the arts. The power of those early years was certainly felt last Friday night with the nostalgia, the camaraderie, and the new friendships that were formed at that event to recognize Ed's life's work as Tarpon Springs' favorite son. I hope you've had an opportunity to view the exhibit and to better understand the life's work of Ed Hoffman. But Ed, we look forward to hearing your presentation on the design and the aesthetics of this building. So Ed, it's yours.
Yes, I do. I'm sorry. All right.
Do you want me to share your screen? You want PowerPoint?
Yeah, it's PowerPoint time. Anyway, thank you all for being here, and thank you, Lynn. Friday night, I spent quite a bit of time thanking people because there are some such superstars in this place, and it's so much appreciated. They do a good job trying to make things look good, and so I'm so appreciative of that. I'm not a techie. I could tell you a couple of little things. They asked me how I was doing, and I said, well, I've just had about 2 or 3 architects. When we were at the office, I was putting this PowerPoint together, and it turns out that, I get it done just at the last minute. I put it to the desktop. Then I'm going to download it to the thumb drive, but my computer is one of the new ones without the USB connector, and I don't have a dongle. So my dongle guy was in the St. Pete office. So anyway, so Todd and Mary saved the day. They made it anyway, and then I get it here, the little thumb drive, and I come walking up. Oh, where's the thumb drive? Where is it? And so it's not here. Oh, I must have left it in the car. I go back to the car. It's not in the car. Another heart attack. So then I go back up and I feel around, and it's in my upper pocket, which is not where I normally put a thumb drive. So anyway, okay. So we've stalled around enough. Gonna put the timer on. What I'm going to do is take you through, most of this is because of the 20, as Christine said, the 20-year anniversary of the museum. We're going to kind of go back a little retrospective of how it kind of came together. Lynn has given presentations before on the parts and pieces of getting it all together, and with Dr. Cutler and Janice Buchanan and all the superstars that had this vision. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to speak pretty much as the architect about it. But so here's the museum, and it's well, I'll get into the aesthetics a little bit later, but it's we were working with a budget, trying to keep it simple, but yet at the same time dealing with the Leepas who wanted something spectacular, and that actually got us, because they were the donors, got us out of the normal typical traditional, well, that's not what we do here at SBC, kind of, well, actually, St. Petersburg Junior College back then, wasn't it, I think? So that gave us some freedoms to try to really do something fun, but we still had a budget regardless. Let's see. Okay, it's not advancing. Well, I want to thank Amy too. She's a superstar. She stays. Look how cool and calm she is, making all this stuff work. So, but stand by. Oh, by the way, the 3 bottles up here, the one I was thinking was white wine, is not white wine. So just, you don't have to rush up here if you're thinking those are 3 bottles of wine. So, but it's still good. It's just not what I expected. All right, but you can make it that way? Okay. All right, so moving along. This is kind of a view of it back before the signage. This is right after it was completed. And again, dealing with the budget, we're trying to do some simple forms at the same time as then having some fun, spending our money in one particular spot. So, excuse me, I'm just a little bit distracted. So, with that, again, the simple form, the simple box, that's the main gallery. So let's go next. But I'm going to take you back. Okay. Yeah, take you back to a view of the way I see the campus years ago and for a long time. But I do a lot of flying, some seaplane flying. This wasn't taken from a seaplane, it's one of the other airplanes. But I grew up on the lake Tarpon. Do you have the pointer? No, just the laser. Okay. Yeah, okay. Well, anybody, and tell me if I'm getting in the way of somebody. I don't want to block anybody's view, but yeah. So this is where I grew up. That was Anderson Park. There was and so I'm always looking at my home stomping grounds, and between the lake here and the Gulf. It's really, really close. You don't normally see that, but just down Klosterman Road is very close. I could go on and on about my childhood growing up and what Klosterman Road was about and things, but I won't. That's right, this won't go next. Okay, this gives you a little bit of view of the original way we were dealing with the campus. And this is Klosterman Road down here, looking to the south. Belcher then just stopped here. There was this loop road. You'll also see that Keystone, Klosterman is a 2-lane road. But we kind of looked at the future and knew that at some point, Belcher was going to come around and actually make a connection and line up down here. So as we looked at the site originally, we had been commissioned to do a library for the campus. We were also kind of going in the throes. This was the late 1900s, I guess you would say, when there was a big discussion, are we even going to have books anymore? How much of it's going to be electronic, how much is up there? So, but we ended up with that site was over here. And this quadrangle, this was kind of the center of the campus, even though it had a lot of portables, that was kind of the focus of the campus. Everything was here. And then how are we going to place a building that would be next? How are we going to place a building that that works for the campus, particularly when we're talking about a library, and then when the museum piece was added, and then the art center, the art studios, and how are we going to integrate that into the campus? Well, the trick is that again, this is kind of that main core, and you kind of think of traditional college campuses having that big major space, courtyard. And so when you look at the courtyard here, and then where should we put the building? How do we connect the building to that courtyard and make it accessible? Particularly as a media center where kids are trying to use it. I shouldn't say kids. There's a lot of older people, right? a lot of diversity of ages, I would say now at college. But how do they find the media center? So you'll see what we did. We ended up with this site here because, again, trying to make this somewhat of an iconic building. We chose this site. Again, this is that loop road. Klosterman's got the lower part of the screen here. And so we chose this site because it would be strong, because we also knew that at some point Belcher was going to come around next. So this is where we are now, of course, and you can kind of see. But what happens, and I'll show you more on plans, is that this spine through here, and I talked. Let me back up. Friday, I talked a lot about team sport. This is a lot of team people. Todd's here. Todd was, you'll see him in a moment too. He's got a cameo in here. Todd's worked with me for so long, and but he came up well together. But I think it was his probably the idea of the spine, and then and then making things work off of that. So, well, we took that and aimed it for that intersection. Next. It's just another view. And again, you can kind of see the pieces of the puzzle. The media center here, you know, the main drop here. We have a huge elevation change, which was one of the big challenges on this site. As you probably know, you had to come up the hill and then come back down again. And from the main part of the campus, you're coming down and coming down. It goes on down forever, it seems like. Not used to telling people what to do. Usually he's pushing my thumb. But this is one of the early drawings, you know, overlooking the lake. But again, this kind of started focusing out here, and with Klosterman up here, and it's aligned onto that intersection because we knew it would be a significant intersection at some point. Next. So as you look a little bit closer, I'm sorry, I've turned things around, but one of the things that we try to work out is how to integrate, how to make all of these people, the main heart of the campus and the courtyard, how do we get them to work between two buildings, actually three buildings that are very close together, and how do we make them find this space out here? So we worked with this spine and then took it through, and we were taking it all the way through into the courtyard. That concrete wall originally was going to work all the way into the campus. So when you see that, there's actually a piece of it over on the other side. Because when we got into the construction cost and all, that got deleted. So at some point, someday, somebody would be, you know, would make my heart soar if they would make this concrete wall that's running through here show up in here. So you get a little sense when you're in this yard, and then bring that right on down through into the building. So next. And so here's Todd. Todd still has dark hair, unlike me. And so this is us working together. And it was a real, you know, it was wonderful. Those are the good old days, as they say. We had a lot of fun. So old computer monitors, which is the beginnings of CAD and all that kind of stuff. Some of you may recognize that, and our tools of the trade. And then, you know, it's coming up with these conceptual sketches of what's going to happen, and the idea of, you know, the simple box, kind of a Bauhaus kind of a thing, but then having the fun out here. A lot of people, you know, ask if it's a nautical theme, and to a certain degree it is. When I say between the two bodies of water, that it's almost as a water kind of a thing for me, as I'm looking down on it and seeing water on both sides of the building. But anyway, and we also, of course, have this water. And so this, yes, does have a little bit of a nautical theme to it. And then the window that you see here has kind of came about by taking this simple box, and how do you decorate in a simple way a plain box, and bringing that just simple line down through seemed to make a lot of sense in the overall composition of this wall. And also, but how do you, well, I'm rambling, but hopefully by the end of this, it'll make some sense. But the idea of how do you bring light into an art gallery, that's a real challenge. How do you keep it from off the paintings and that kind of thing? So I'll go back to that a little bit more when we get to an interior shot. Again, just kind of getting a sense of what's going on here. And it's really two levels. I'll talk about this lower floor. A lot of people don't even know that a big part of the museum is down below us. There's a lot going on down there. That's where that's the engine of the place. We just look at the frosting on the cake up here compared to down here. So next. And then kind of looking at the elevations that started this out here with the composition, again, the simple thing with the wall. Abraham Ratner has a beautiful signature. To me, that was a real theme. I wanted that to be a real strong thing. But then there's this big thing about, well, how do how do people know what it is? Nobody recognizes his signature. So So it ends up being this, what's out here now is a little bit of a combination of things, which I guess is working okay, but anyway, so you have the art museum, the studios here, and the main building here, and then the point here. And this is my Titanic shot here. I say it's Janice Buchanan out there to celebrate this thing. So next. And by the time we finished that drawing, we were a little dark out. Next. An early model of it. That's some of the elements on the building that were here that are no longer here. They got simplified and taken away for the economy reasons. A lot of artists get to do what they want because they got a paintbrush and they're not too worried about how much paint they're using. But they don't have somebody come in and say, no, I'm sorry, you can't add that in because that's too much paint. But unfortunately, that's the architect's, issue. Next. And then this is a little bit more of the later model. Some of these that were done, and this presentation actually was given before the building was built. So some of these where I was explaining what they were about to see. And next. So this is, again, the spine through here, and then the wall, this is the wall that goes on through the main part of the campus. Next. Go through these quickly. Next. This model, by the way, is out in the room, in the main space. But we're trying to keep this light and delicate, and then the structural engineers get a hold of it, and it starts to get heavier. And actually, there's two cables supporting this thing, and that's because you can actually take one of them off to replace it, and then put the other one on. That's why there are two, which it says. It's not that we needed two cables, it's just that's the way you kind of replace them. So next. And down below here we have space overlooking the water. By the way, we have almost a 50 feet of wall there, a concrete wall. It's pretty thick. Thanks. And again, just kind of the simplicity. That's redundant. Let's keep going. And this is down below. So some of you that have, occasionally they'll do a tour down below for docents and others that you might get lucky and you get to go down there. But down below, this is, again, the spine wall. And then there's other spaces down below. Next. This is the upper and part of the thing of this main space here in the middle that you first walked into, that's the lobby. That was designed to be almost Grand Central Station type of space. It's noisy. We have hard surfaces. There's a big volume. It's kind of the center of everything. And then off of that ends up when you come in here, should orientate you. These are the front doors. Then when you come into this space, you have the strength of the wall, which kind of organizes everything. But then the library, the media center is over down below here. Then the art studios are over here, and then we had a techie type of a room there. And then the museum, though, as being the focal of the thing, is the lighted. This passage is the straightaway. And I'll talk about that more in a moment. Then we got to show this design to the Leepas. This is Alan and Isabel. And so that was a fun day at the provost office. Dick Valeris, Janice Buchanan was here. And so they talked about what they liked, and I think they pretty much liked it all. So the next. And this is a fun one. I really enjoyed Nick. Look at the smile on his face with Janice wrapped around and showing off those drawings that you just saw. I think Todd was taking these pictures because he was here next. And then we went, walked out to the site, had a little golf cart. This is out on Leepa and Glaris, and showing how these things were set up. And this is our director, and Janice. Okay. Thanks. Do I just need to touch that? Okay. Yeah, okay. And here's Todd with his glasses and totally black hair. So next. And then we got into construction drawings, and I'll just click. Oh, the space bar. We'll just kind of quickly go through these. These are the elevations and then sections through the building. You can kind of see all the spaces that are down below. Don't go too far, Amy. You make me nervous when you. No, I'm kidding. So I think we've got it covered. But then in Florida, working in sand, all of our projects have always been on a pretty Florida flat spot. We're not working in Atlanta, working in Florida. However, this site has such a drop when you look at from up at the campus up above all the way down out to the water. There's quite a drop, and so. Oh, these are call-in things. Okay, thank you. So being able to design for retaining walls, and we had some soil issues. We had a drilling rig that was drilling for testing, soil testing, and it broke through, and the whole truck fell into the hole. It became a big cave. So you have to be real careful around this area with soils down below. And again, just some more construction pictures while we were kind of trying to maintain this site. There's also a lot of things that you don't ever see. That takes to make it seem so simple. Dolly Parton told Letterman one time that it takes a lot of money to make me look this cheap. Well, it takes a lot of infrastructure to make the lights come on, make the air temperature, phones work, power work, and so this is, there's a lot involved. That's when I talk about being a team project. There's a lot of consultants and people involved in this that make it all happen. This is that wall. Again, it's a huge wall, and so they're carrying a tremendous amount of concrete and to make this spine work. And so this is I could get into details, but I won't because I want to. Anyhow, so there's a lot going on to make that spine wall the spine wall, and to make it work. There was one blowout that we had, and they had to replace. I can't remember time. It was like about 30 or 40 feet of wall up at the top, about 10 feet tall. Had to completely take it out, cut it out, chisel it out, and then re-pour it all because the forms had let go a little bit. A tremendous amount of weight in those forms because it just wants to blow out. So it was getting really badly pillowed. The form's not supporting it well enough. So I had to redo that. So it was a pretty challenging project. But so these are the this is the form work for the concrete. So you can kind of see the site there. And, a lot going on there. Pretty tricky site to deal with, particularly with Florida sugar sand. So this is, of course, what we ended up with, as you know. A little thing. This is that space I said it's loud. It was intentionally designed to be an active space. There's a lot of noise because a lot of architecture, good architecture, is not only the sequence of visual spaces and that progression of spaces. I always talk about that art is, they talk about architecture as frozen, frozen music or whatever, and I don't think so. Unless you're sitting there looking at a photograph, that's really something that you're moving through. So it's constantly changing, and so as you move through it, then, part of it is that you're pretty quiet outside. You come into this volume of space that has a resonance, probably maybe like this microphone seems to me, but But then the idea is that then from there, then you go off into these quieter, smaller spaces for solitude and to ponder the artwork. So again, this is one of the early sketches that we did for the with again the Beyond Center for the museum. But part of that is to really expose as much as we could of everything that's going on in the building from that one point. So from the one point over here is the media center that you can see, the auditorium, the changing temporary gallery, again, the main, with the light at the end of the tunnel, and that's part of what that porch on the outside is about, is taking you out to the light, you know, go to the light, go to the light. So, and then back then we had a store, a museum store, which is great. And then we had the interactive gallery. And then behind me over on Liz's side over here. That's Liz, by the way, everybody. So you're on the big screen, Liz. So, and then with that, we, you know, back over in her world, we had where they had the room set up. So then that was going from the sketch that was done a long time before we started the project to what we finally ended up with. And by the way, Lynn had a lot to do with not just making everything work, you know, technically as the director, but he was also helping with a lot of the design decisions about how we move through the building, how we flow through the building, and actually some of the colors as well. That was very appreciated by me because it would have just been a white box if it was, you know, architects like to do everything black and white, you know, cool. So, but Lynn added the colors, which was really delightful. And then you can kind of say the use of the concrete wall and the variety of things that can happen on that. And also another thing with these interior shots, you get to see the structure. You're going to see that as a theme. I do a lot with exposing structure so that you can pretty well understand how the building is built by just walking through it. You have very little structure that's hidden. If it's drywall, it's probably not load bearing. So, and that's that window again, bringing light into the space, but yet not letting it be on the artwork itself. So, and then again, the columns are disengaged from the walls, so they're always exposed. Again, you can figure that out. So, and then down, whoops, jeepers, I touched two things. You can touch that and that. I'm gonna go back. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, down below, just a little shot down below. So again, I could go on and on about the design, the box that contains the hot, moist Florida air from the interior of that space, particularly in the archives, so that you bring things off of a truck and you don't just open the big roll-up door and dump 90% humidity into the building. We have this locking station. It's kind of like on a space station, Nicole, I bet, where you have a little decompression area there before you bring the work back into the museum itself. So, oops, got too many things in my hand. Again, just kind of the sense of it. This is the media center. Actually, there are books. Look at those books. And Ellen Leepa's work is part of the design and decorating there. So that's kind of the, you know, the sense of it. The things that were, again, there's some nautical things going on here, but they're also, you know, we have the strength of the building being big and simple, but then trying to bring out and keep some lines going. And then this is where you get to play with the art part of the building, where you bring some different textures, materials, and shadows, and kind of peel away the roof. So, which is also literally, you can pull that trellis thing off for an expansion in the future. So, but for now, that's kind of just working together as a composition. And And again, things got a little bigger than I was hoping for, but it all kind of, I think it's pretty well worked out, working around the trees as well. And then that lower space that you see down here right on the water is for the staff. That's the staff break room and their little deck out there. Very secret place, right, Christine? So I think if you donate $1 million, you get to go down there. So that's kind of the, and again, we're playing with the little boxes, trying to get a composition together of all the different parts and pieces of the building. So they're very reflective from the outside, that you can understand that these are the labs here. That every place, also when you're in that, by the way, when you're inside that main lobby, you can not only do you look at all these other things I mentioned, but you can also see outside. Trying to be outside and see daylight, bringing daylight, that's a big theme of ours, into all buildings, into spaces, but to be able to see and understand where you are. Anytime you know where you are in a building is a good thing, so you're not just lost. So that looks down to I should have pointed that out. This window here looks down to the amphitheater. We also, by the way, have a way to bring Pink Floyd and all back underneath the building, so they don't have to go up and around or through the water to get to a big concert over here if they want to do that. Pink Floyd has a big operation. Some of you probably know that. So again, a little sense of the building and the lighting from that window and that here. Kind of fun. It also works where you're looking down, when you're close, you're looking down into the water, but you're not necessarily looking at the mobile home park across the way, nor what has been unfortunately built on the other side. Here more recently, she had mentioned the Dean Rowe Award. That's the Tampa Bay AIA Award, the best of that year. And this is our little group to receive the award. That was a lot of faces, some of which are no longer with us. But oops, oh, too fast back. Thank you. Yeah, and then Christine also mentioned that it was nominated for the best 100 buildings in the last 100 years in Florida. It was an AIA kind of their 100th anniversary kind of thing where they looked at buildings around the state. We're fortunate to have that recognition. So that's kind of where we are. Then I'm going to just break and take you through. Oops, where's my timer thing? Goes away. Oh, we're about done. But I'm just going to show you some quick images that will show you when I talked about my children, all these different buildings being my children, and that there is a common DNA between them. And this is our house over on the other side of the lake now. Seaplane is fun, but it's a building that I wanted to do glass, concrete, and steel because I've done a lot of beach little bungalow houses, old cracker houses and things, and then but so anyway, I wanted to break away from that. But Barbara, unfortunately, is married to me, and her vision wasn't quite the same. And so she wanted the little bungalow, the little house in the woods, the little house. So this is a Florida house sitting on, her feminine house, Florida house sitting on top of my, concrete and glass and steel. So it's kind of this odd. I think it's broken some new ground because it's kind of different in the way it's mixed those two. By the way, these are two slides. It's not all one slide. Two separate photographs. One's that kind of shows you the foyer. But you can see the concrete is there. The skylights are there. Some of the steel. A lot of things that you see in this building, they were done kind of close to the same time. And the use of glass And the transparency, a lot of that is writing stuff. I mean, and as I said before, a friend of mine, my mentor said, he who steals from me steals at least twice. And so there's, this inside outside blurring the lines between interior and exteriors. That's, I didn't create that at all. So that's been going for a while, particularly since we came up with the idea of glass. So that's over on Lake Tarpon, trying to mix, but you see the concrete wall with the snap ties in it. And so and that's kind of the main structure, but then the house opens up out onto the outdoor spaces. And we have, Barbara and I built screens out there to fold up because we were cheap, not having phantom screens, power screens, but that gives it kind of the campground look up there, so it's kind of keeps us humble. And there's another house for the Martinez's, and another, there's a house done back in the 80s. It's just over on the other side of just off the river. And we just kind of did a little bit of a rework of it, but it's kind of been holding up pretty well. This is one of my favorite projects that we've ever done, and that's the Tarpon Springs Sponge Docks West bathrooms. It's a four-holer, but independent. So the whole structure is held together by cables as a mass, and that is a really nautical thing too. And then this is, again, back to the Martinez house. I got my slides mixed up, but you'll see some common themes where the building wants to float off the ground. It's kind of elevated. And then the expression of the curved, trying to play a different role. There's a central spine through this building, just like there is here in this, but that spine is not a big concrete wall. It's this space. Let me just go on. I think it brings it, and it lines up on this axis. It takes you all the way through, and then goes to the lap pool in the back to a back wall where there's supposed to be some fabulous art back there up on the blank wall, but they've kind of been hesitating because it makes a really good moving wall. They project the camera on that. And again, the expression of structure pretty much everywhere it's evident of how the house is built. And then the sweep up on the left side there is the living space anchored by the chimney. And again, floating buildings. This is a little bit of a sister house to the, not a house, but Brooker Creek Preserve. This is at early stages before you can see that before the friends got out there. Well, actually, some of them are planting new things planted there. And so it's, and again, it's floating in the glass corners and all the things that we've been using for themes, daylighting everywhere. I think a theme of ours is that you can go anywhere in most any building other than storage spaces and have daylight, and power goes off. It's not a big deal. So, and again, trying to make the building kind of really tuck in and fit in with nature and work around existing trees and all. So that's, again, Burger Creek, that's been very, just kind of representative of our work. And then kind of the more recent thing is creative contractors. Well, creative contractors not only built this building, they also built the Burger Creek Preserve. And so, anyway, I was just really fortunate enough when they're a pretty big outfit, and they selected us to do their building for their new headquarters, about 14,200 square feet. And so, but they have this 5-acre site with a lot of trees on it. And so we kind of designed the building in and around the trees. And then again, transparency, the use of glass, and then this datum that it's got this high volume of ceiling, but then like this building, a lot of places, it has this datum that goes around at 8 feet that gives you more of a human scale. Keeps you from feeling like you're really lost in there. And then there's spaces that you can see the outdoors is constantly being seen. And again, every space in that whole building, which has worked out. I think they're pretty happy with that. And now this also has a spine running down, picked out the favorite tree on the site. And that favorite tree is outside of that area there. So the spine looks back, not the one on the left, that's actually a secondary spine. So that's that kind of part of the spine thing looking the other way back towards the front door. But then all the spaces play off of that. So that's the end of what we're doing. So, okay, get to sit for a little bit.
Yeah.
While we're getting situated here, I'm just gonna stop sharing our screen and we're gonna move the camera a little bit so that it's with Dr. Rod Davis's help. That's great. And I'm gonna share this microphone and we'll get Amy, can we get the other microphone plugged in? All right, now it's time for questions and answers. Just getting set up.
You guys can hear me? We're on. All right. Ed, thank you. That was so incredibly insightful about not just this building, but also the architecture you've done. I think it better explains some of the design elements and aesthetics that are in your work. It's truly remarkable. I'm going to ask you a few questions as the principal of Hoffman Architects PA, and then we'll open it up to the floor for questions. Before we begin, as an architect, to design a museum, that's really a wonderful commission. To design a museum in your own hometown is almost unheard of. So how did the development of this building affect the trajectory of your career?
Well, I think it was a wonderful blessing. And it kind of came about in a, like everything, most everything in my life, I've been blessed or lucky or whatever. Part of it was horrible, of course. But
90%.
yeah, 90%. But I don't know that it's really changed what I do. But it has been so, it is one of my favorite projects by far. Although that's kind of painful to say because there's so many projects that I love. Somebody said, "What's your favorite project?" And I said, "Yeah, it's the next. It's the one I'm working on now." And so it's you know, as far as changing things, I'm not sure it changed things as much as it's giving you a comfort level that okay, we're doing all right. Great. Good. And it is a progress.
Before I continue, I want to make a statement about architecture. As when architecture is created as an aesthetic or an intellectual purpose, it is defined as one of the fine arts. Architecture is impactful, it influences our environment, it advances our creative expressions, defines our culture in our built environment. Many of the structures and statements that define your modernist aesthetic have a deep respect and admiration and commitment to the past, despite their modernist aesthetic. Your office of nearly 40 years is in an 1889 home in the Tarpon Springs National Historic District. You have a preservation side to the business that you can see in our City Hall and in the Safford House, the works that you've done there. You've incorporate historic Florida vernacular architecture into some of your work. And you're currently the president of the Tarpon Springs Area Historical Society. So what's the deal?
Well, yeah, that is a pretty broad broad range, and I actually I find, well, first of all, the office, is this driving you all crazy? Yeah. How can we, is there anything we can do for that?
The mics are just close
Do
together.
we need to get them further apart? Would that help? Like, I have my back to them, would that be better?
Want to slide that way.
I'll come over here. All right, so, okay, Lynn, how are you doing over there?
I'll go visit quick.
What was the question? Oh, yeah, my office. One microphone? Let me turn this one off. Okay. Oh, so I get to talk.
Yeah.
I can say whatever I want. You can't interrupt. Yeah, under your breath. Oh, yeah, the question about doing preservation work. And I've always been involved, enjoyed history. Let's see, I see, forgive me. You thought you didn't think you were in the cheap seats when you sat down, did you? So, you know, through my father, who's been a designer, it has just such a richness of work, both contemporary when he was younger, and then got richer and richer and a little bit more traditional as he got older. Some of that has really rubbed off on me. And I think when I was in college, I just wanted everything to be contemporary. Everything, you know, Ayn Rand and her Fountainhead, you know, I was gonna, you know, Frank Lloyd Wright, get out of the way. We're doing, you know, Ed Hoffman's here. We're doing the buildings that are going to be really slickest things in the world, and some of that. You know, I really got into that thing. You don't put, you know, gingerbread and frou-frou on your car, right? So who drives a car with gargoyles and stuff hanging off it anymore? And so, but as I get older, I start to see really the value and appreciate a much broader range of design. And, you know, if you look at a cathedral, you know, Notre Dame, or, you know, whatever, it's and the craftsmanship of those things, it's just really, really wonderful. I even enjoy, I haven't done other architects, but I'm really starting to kind like, you know, colonial architecture, you know, it's just, and my grandfather had a lot of things that I can see the richness in that, I guess is what I'm saying. And everything doesn't need to be slick. But on the other hand, I love the beautiful simplicity of just forms of big, broad brush strokes and forms accelerated with a little bit of softness to them, with delicate pieces added to it. So, but Florida architecture is always, you know, I'm a Florida, I was born in St. Pete, and one of my real mentors was Robert Bradford Brown, who's an architect in Tarpon Springs. And he's done some just beautiful buildings with really big overhangs. You know, and I grew up in this, you know, in school in the 70s, we were all about biology and you know, saving the earth, saving the planet. We're in the fuel crisis, and we had to open up all the windows and keep big overhangs to keep the sun out. And so those kind of environmental, we were kind of doing, you know, sustainable architecture way back when I was in school. So that's kind of been a theme of mine throughout. And the old office we're in is 1889, downtown Tarpon, two-story building. And part of that is because I got a deal in it, but and it's a good location. But also because it's a building that it's a nice piece of architecture, right? But it also is non-committed. Everybody, all my clients that come in and see that, they love that house. They don't care whether they are going to do a really slick modern house or not. They're okay with that. If I'm in a real slick modern office, then they want to do some preservation work. Maybe I'm not their guy, they think, you know. So it's a very safe safe way to have an office. And then, you know, then again, this historic aspect of it, the Safford House, you know, the history behind, you know, this, Governor Safford is so strong and rich. And to be able to work on that project with Bob Ray in the office. And my dad, did all the material work, found all the pieces that were appropriate for the time period. That was just a wonderful experience too. So I like lots of things. I'm a short attention span. I like to do a lot of different things. Very few things with you.
Oh, use your mic.
I forgot.
I guess.
Here we
All
go.
right. When you design a structure, it is often a complex organism that includes engineering and functional design of lighting, plumbing, mechanical operations. It generally requires consultants and collaborative effort for permitting and land development, contractors, trade workers, and the list goes on. Architecture is a science, it's a business, and then there are those moments of what we call the dreaded value engineering, in which elements of your design may be cut from your design. How do you balance the challenges for a design build structure while maintaining your aesthetic integrity?
Well, I'd like to say that no alcohol is involved, which is kind of pretty much true. But yeah, losing parts of a building, as I kind of alluded to before, because you have to meet budget requirements. Anybody can, I shouldn't say anybody, but design isn't nearly as challenging when you have an unlimited budget. And some of these superstar buildings that a lot of architects are able to do, when they can spend whatever they want. It makes your job a lot easier. When they say you have a limited budget, and you're trying to stay on budget, that ends up being a real challenge. So it's really the best architecture to me is one that's able to get, for lack of a better term, the most bang for the buck. You get a building, beautiful building that looks expensive without being expensive. And so the simplicity of a building, the design is what's really critical. In this building, as I've mentioned, there were a number of things that we lost. That if you'll look at the model out in the hall there, you'll be able to see some of those things. And part of that is like when you walk up the ramp towards the entrance here, that space in the corner, there was a pitched roof, a matching roof to what's out over the porch, with a higher space there in the corner of the media center. And that was kind of a nice feature. We had balconies on each one of the studios. That was a nice feature. We had some extra skylights in here, a clear story up on the top. And all those things as we were working through the project had to go. That's really painful. But like if y'all, there's you, an artist, if somebody said, no, you need to take that palm tree out of it. We can't afford that painful palm tree drawing. Or whatever. It's hard, but I understand, and to be able to make it, a workable thing.
Sort of along that same line is a question that talks about your relationship with the clients. I imagine there's a very human side, and how do you develop an understanding of the client's need and also educating about your aesthetic and your design and build that trust and confidence?
Well, getting to know the clients is really critical. We talk about houses that are custom houses. It's really about the client. I'd say, I can design in a lot of different styles or whatever, but I don't have to live there. They do. So it needs to work for them and still be good architecture at the same time. So they're not necessarily particular style we have to work in. Getting to know the client, personal things, we get to know, you know, I've often said that you have to be a little bit of a therapist, you know, at the same time, dealing with clients and be able to sales them to pitch your ideas that, because they've seen something in the magazine or whatever, that they like. It's on other, you know, housing and subdivision they like or whatever. So to be able to educate them on what is good architecture. Let me mention real quick that my first client, I was in college, and so I was putting myself through college with by designing this house over in Lakeland, and I told my dad, I said, this guy has really good taste. We're going to be able to do some nice things. He said, oh, you just mean he likes your taste. Yeah, whatever, but yeah, so. Anyhow, but you learn things about people, when a couple comes in, it's usually the wife is pretty much, she's the nest builder. The husband generally says, give me a place to rebuild my Mustang and a place for all my fishing rods. And the other thing is just make her happy. So that's usually my marching orders. And that was one of the issues that with Barbara and I, when you design your own house, very few architects have designed their own house. And I know why. You know, poor Barbara, she would be a great nest builder in terms of the design and things that she wanted. But unfortunately, she's married to an architect that has, you know, that different things. So that was that interesting struggle that made the house what it is. And I'm quite equally unhappy with it. So, yeah, bravely happy. So she's happy, we're unhappy, we're both happy. So it's all worked out. But one couple, you know, you kind of learn, like I say, you learn some of the details about people, and they, you know, they say, well, they want two separate, you know, master bedrooms. Doesn't know, not master, that's a proper term. I'm not showing my age. That's the owners, and anyway, and they both had it, you could say, this isn't, and sure enough, by the time we got to the end of the design, they were getting divorced. So, but you just, you know, find out about people. There's another one I won't go into, but it's really fascinating. The house over on the road.
In the exhibit, there's a wonderful quote from Ed's website about the relationship of building his own home, and everybody should read that. It's a great, I wish I could quote it. It's wonderful. Also, I just want you to know that I buy lottery tickets for one reason: the dream that someday I will win and you will design my house. So I keep hoping. Yeah, really. Hoffman Architects is highly recognized for its more than 60 educational institutions, including what's called the Hoffman Design. There are 17 schools in Pinellas County that are based on the Hoffman Design. You have some very strong philosophical beliefs about learning centers. So if you could share that with us for a moment.
Well, when I see kids, they're just so small and sweet and fragile, particularly elementary, you know, age. You just really want the best for them. And when you see bad design, I just get angry. You know, because it's just, these kids are, you know, it's like being sentenced to a jail term, you know. From my perspective, I know the teacher, it's not about necessarily all about the architecture. You know, it's really so much to do with the teacher and blah, blah, blah. But from my view, the architecture is a real key piece of it, and how the kids can use daylight, and they can see the outdoors, they can be exposed to the outdoors. To me, that's really critical, and the scale of the spaces. So we designed our elementary school, which ended up being successful enough be used over and over. That said, I don't like to do the same thing over and over, but we kind of were able to improve it each time it was done. It was Tarpon Elementary, series, and then it was Tarpon Elementary, or the Sunset Hills Elementary. And each time we try to make it a little bit better and bring it up to date. And they were lead, when I talked about sustainability, a lot of people know about lead projects. And, you know, the sustainable, well, our school, they wanted to make one, Pinellas County wanted us to have one that was officially lead qualified. So we were able to get a lead gold certificate on our building, on elementary school, very little, with very little changes to it. But, you know, parking spaces for commuter bicycle people or something, you know, teachers. But it all worked out really well. And that repeat gave us, you know, part of the income was a driver, so that then we could over-design everything else, all the whole fun project. You know, we were losing our shirts on. So, what was your question?
I want to talk a little bit about some of the design elements for safety and aesthetics, color, and all of that.
Well, I think it's, yeah, the big thing is that we do all the same things that we do for everybody. I mean, we love to have, you know, school should be fun. You know, it should be a privilege and fun, and a kid should want to go to school. And the building will play an important part of that. So in our buildings that we have, like the, you know, the elementary schools, we're on tight sites. Pinellas County typically has, you know, we don't have a lot of sprawling room to put out a big campus, nor do we even want one. But the spaces are scaled for the kids. The wayfinding is simple. We have a simple spine down the middle of it and a little courtyard that tends to be a nice scaled space for small people. The heights of handrails and the detail in it. You know, you're dealing with 3 or 4 foot tall people. And so that's, you know, I think the scale is one of the most important things. But then also surprise. I always talk about that even as a, you know, we all want to be surprised. And that's in these spaces too. All of our work, we want to be surprised. And my dad talked about this as a theme, that sequence that you're coming through. And the progression of those things and to be surprised. We all do that when we're a little kid. You play with a baby, it's like, I'm sure the cavemen playing peekaboo with their kids. And why do they do that? Because everybody loves surprises. And so in architecture, it's kind of the same way. So that's something. We have bridges that go from one side of the building to the other on the second level, so they can look down and all the other kids, and they also understand where they are in the overall building. So many buildings now, it's all air conditioning box, you know, becoming members. The security, you know, all the security issues that we have now are a real challenge. I talk about that for a minute. So there's just a lot of elements to it. But when they kind of come together, you can really feel good that, you know, this kid's going to go to the school for 6 years. And, you know, every day, and you're giving them the best that you can. School board is kind of like that very well.
You designed a multitude of different commercial structures, from starting with the Sponge Exchange, which is the heart of the Sponge Dock, waterfront restaurants, corporate headquarters, churches, community centers, environmental education centers that integrate with nature beautifully. We talked about the incredible residential architecture that you've done, and of course, this wonderful building that we're in. Of these types of structures, what is your favorite to design? And I kind of go back to that on your presentation. I don't think there's too many architects that will talk about a restroom project as one of their favorites, but there's reasons why that's an interest or a favorite. So what is your favorite, and when do you get to implement your designs into a structure of a particular kind?
That's
I have a short, like I said, I have a short attention span. I love them all. You know, I feel bad behind that speaker. Oh, you can see me. Look, you see my back. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know that y'all could see me. That's a lot better, because I felt bad. Yeah, okay. All right, so back to the question of my favorite building, and it's like, well, what's your favorite child? You know, if you have multiple, after 40, you know, a lot of them. And they're trying to, you know, I keep thinking, you know, this putting this exhibit together, you know, with Christina and you, trying to choose what's going to go up. Holy cow, that's a painful decision because I'm leaving out a lot of really clients that I love, you know, that this represents, one of the best houses that I've ever done. This is a different house. You know, there are just so many things that I've enjoyed each and every one. Right now, I'm doing a distillery and a brewery, you know, two things that I've never done before. But that's fun. I love learning about new things. I've never done we've never done a museum before we did this one. We've never really done an elementary school before we did what turned out to be, you know, everybody loved it so much as 16 times. So you don't get in a rut, you know, you're constantly doing new things. But yet there's a common thread between the material. There's still everything built out of it, you know, glass and steel and concrete. But the way they're organized is you have to learn about, you know, what's important and who your client is, who you serve, and to make it work for them. So I can't say which is my favorite. I would hate to get stuck into anything. You know.
Well, I think that's, we're running a little late, but let's open it up for questions from anybody. Ron?
Just a quick question about timing with regard to this building. How long did the design phase take from start to finish? And how long did the construction phase from start to finish? How long did that take?
Well, this project was a little bit longer because we started out with the library. Just the library, and then involved, and then, you know, Dr. Cutler and everyone with the artwork, and all of that took some time, but we actually got a job to do this. So I don't know, Todd, let's see, before you had any gray hair, I had very little. So there was probably usually the incubation time is a year of design, and then another full year of construction. That's kind of a simple. Long and short of it. Most of our elementary schools were the same way, except for the ones that started getting repeated. And so there's some were fast track.
Anyone else?
Do you do the drawings in watercolors?
No, I cheat. I use design markers.
Oh.
Design markers on my lot, you
But
know.
you do it by hand.
Oh, yeah, oh, that's fine, yeah. A few times, 2 or 3 times, I was able to get married when we were younger architects in the office to actually take my sketch and then where there's big areas of color, you know, grass or whatever, she was able to lay in a color from the computer, so it'd be consistent as opposed to, you know, the lines that are looking like the, you know, cloud fields.
Do you still do drawings or just use the computer?
Oh, I'm still drawing. I draw.
They're very nice.
Drawing today. And so, thank you. So that's part of the fun, and I think there's always kind of debate about that, you know, among architects, young and old, particularly, about when you're drawing yourself, there's that hand-brain connection. Somehow I'm walking around inside the buildings, even though there's, you know, 3 or 4 lines there, I've kind of got that, you know, I'm starting to have a sense of what that is. And when a lot of times now we're translating that into the computer, you know, And in fact, I have a client right now, I feel bad for the situation that, you know, I designed a house for them in St. Pete. And I did all these drawings, they were hand drawings, and I loved them, and they loved the house that this was all from. And they have a place on the other coast, and they hired an architect over there. And because they thought, well, that would be more expeditious, because the codes and because the neighborhood type thing. And then they call me up and say, listen, we just don't like his design. And so I ended up doing some work for him. Hopefully it'll, you know, feed over to the other architect, like him do the dirty work, and I'll just do the fun part. But the biggest, I think one of the things that's really part of it is that computer, the way it did the building, it was so cold and stark and hardline that I feel bad that I'm selling her on my sketch as opposed to the architecture. So anyway, that's just my view. On the other hand, it's a changing world, and Yoni in our office, he showed me his drawing that he's got, you know, on computer, and then you push a button for sketch mode. That's pretty good. So that really hurts. That really hurts. Yeah, when that computer program's gonna, you know, do a nicer sketch than I do. So, I'm ready to, you know, maybe it's time.
Anyone else? Question?
Yeah. Yeah, yes, we do. We work constantly with landscape architects, and I think the one that was probably the most important was Burger Creek Reserve, trying to, because you have all the, you know, there's so many aspects of, you know, of saving a tree and those kind of things. That you've got underground utilities, but, you know, sewer lines are very particular. When you flush the toilet, that things go downhill. And that means, and they don't want to do a lot of turning and zigzagging around, you know, so drawing straight lines and preserving landscape, you know, particularly existing landscape is a challenge. And one of our Dunning High School, we designed this courtyard, if you ever go down there, this courtyard, and worked around this wonderful tree, and we weren't paying enough attention to what the civil engineer was doing. He ran a line through it, and they you know, so they took out the tree, and you know, that was a bad day. When we discovered that, because although when I planted that tree, as soon as that happened, new tree, as soon as that happened, it was very nice. 2 years have gone by. So yes, landscape architects. Yes.
Is there an artist or an architect or a particular place that has inspired you?
Oh, goodness. Well, yeah, well, I have the heroes. Flame Blood Wright was probably my superhero from the beginning. Because, my dad introduced me to a lot of his work when I was young. Talked about the library with the, you know, down in the basement that you could read a book without the turning on lights, and the daylight could work into the building. And the transparencies, the inside, outside. And Purdue did a lot, you know, they started, you know, with concrete, and kind of plastic rock. They call it sometimes, but being able to, you know, show the strength with the concrete. I've had people come in and say, you know, when are they gonna paint that wall, you know, that concrete wall? I don't think you quite get it. The concrete is, you know, a show of strength. Well, you know, Kahn and Purdue, you know, did that a long time ago. So that's hard to say that I'm a favorite, but again, it goes back to that thing of he who steals from me steals twice. Very few original ideas when you know, that if you're going to be honest about it. Because I, you know, kind of constantly look at you know, start looking at books or even old books and say, oh man, that looks like something I did. You know, a lot of stuff is stuck in here that, you know, I really can't take credit for it. I think the only thing that is really you know, was totally different that we've done is that, you know, the thing of Barbara wanting the little Florida cracker house and me wanting the concrete, glass and steel, and putting those two together, I think is really one of the few original things that I could really say that I don't know anybody else that's doing. I did that. But that was because I had to. It wasn't because it was my brilliant idea. Happy wife, happy life. So, anybody else? The cooking time?
I think we have a fun question, which is, what would you like your legacy to be? That's a tough one.
No, that's not a possible question.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's just, oh man, it's mainly about all the people that I love making.
The architecture outlives all of us.
Yeah, and I've seen some things that, one of my favorite buildings is Pebbles Restaurant over at Altamont Springs. Designed that, you know, quite some time ago. And I think that was one of the best pieces of architecture we've ever had. Probably the best. And working with my dad, did all the interiors for it. And, you know, it's just a beautiful, I'm usually pretty critical of my work, but that's that, you know. I tell you some of the things, but then they'll stick with you and they'll drive you nuts. And they'll tell you why that's just right. You shouldn't have done that. But the building is just a great, you know, building I'm so proud of. We didn't photograph it very well, unfortunately. And I went by back not too long ago, and the building's been totally, the site's totally cleared, and they built a Starbucks nasty box. And that really hurt. One thing that's even equally painful is another restaurant. Well, it's on a wall in the, you know, Pebbles Restaurant. This over kind of Disney, not in Disney, but just outside of Prospect, so just off of I-4. There was a building that I was very proud of. Had a lot of writing kind of things about it, the big overhead. So box glass, bud glass porches on it. Each one was a little dining room. Anyway, it was beautifully detailed on a brick board, you know, for the masonry job that was done and all that kind of thing. And I went back over there and they sold it, and they sold it to a company who decided, well, what tourists want that are coming to Florida is they want some pirate that's got its drug deals and stuff. So they got, I don't remember the name of it, it's like Johnny's Pirate Place or whatever. And they have this airplane kind of crash. We just did this, you know, where my dad had this beautiful little angelic pieces that were floating down, kind of circling around, floating down out of the skylight. You know, they ripped all that out and put this crashed airplane, and they have, you know, plastic palm trees, and they took, you know, pink and because they thought it was supposed to be Key West, it was crashing in Key West, it's a stupid thing. And it just, man, it was really hard. Kind of thing I say, well, it's like, you know, you have your daughter, she goes off and you know, she goes away and she ends up wearing, you know, you see her years later and she ran away, she's got all this makeup that's totally trashed and druggy, and you know, that's the way I felt. It's like heartbreak. It's like, what have these people done to this beautiful building? So anyway, it's kind of a, you know, your legacy. I'm also finding old enough now to, you know, couple things. One is that how to design buildings maybe that better to last. Because when you're young, you think, well, they're going to last forever. You know, but they don't, and so they have a lifespan. And so how they're detailed, how they're designed is really important. Yeah. And then what last is going to do, I don't know what's going to. Hopefully, this building will consistently be here. Somebody is going to think it's important enough to take care of it. Maintenance is code. So, anyway, I think it's a natural state. I can't remember the parties.
Well, I think we'll call it a day, but Ed, thank you. You are a good friend. We hope you will be back for one.
Or you gonna say goodnight, Christine?
I just want to thank you all so much for being with us this evening. This was really, really special. And we're so grateful to Ed and to Lynn for all of their creative vision in building this place into what it is today. 20 years later, I hope that we can continue this story and this legacy and continue to celebrate you in this home for art and for community. And we're going to be here for a long time. Don't worry. I promise we won't turn your daughter into. But thank you so much. We appreciate you being here, and we hope you get to say hi to Ed and wish him well. And we have this beautiful little book that's, if you haven't signed it yet, it's part of a piece of artwork that we're giving to Ed that's at our front desk. We'd love to have you share your comments and your well wishes for Ed. So thank you, and good night.